Good day, students, and welcome to CRE1501 Creativity in the Early Years. This is your second presentation for Learning Unit 2, and I am your lecturer, Dr. Ayesha Carrim, and you can email me on ecarrier1@unisa.ac.za for any further support. Okay, so the purpose of this presentation is to take you through the content and outcomes of Learning Unit 2 and just give you a brief introduction to help you become familiar with the content of Learning Unit 2. So if you look at Learning Unit 2, it's learning creatively through the visual arts. Your contents would be more on the importance of visual arts as an early learning experience, conceptual underpinnings of visual arts. This includes developmental stages of visual art as well as an alternative, way of viewing children's artistic development. You'll also look at the implementation of visual arts in the early learning, which include the learning environment, the people, the learning program, and of course, we'll end with a reflection and conclusion. So you basically need to understand what the outcomes of this unit is so that you have an understanding of what you're trying to achieve at the end of this learning unit. So outline the theoretical findings that inform early learning in relation to the visual arts. You also need to engage with the structure of visual arts to use central concepts and inquiry tools to support learning and draw on theoretical underpinnings, including play-based pedagogies, to set up an appropriate learning environment for the promotion and implementation of the visual arts. We also want you to translate your own knowledge, draw on appropriate learning standards and other indigenous resources to design, plan, implement, evaluate, and reflect on meaningful visual arts experiences for all children, critically reflecting on visual arts experiences, offered to children to improve your practice as you go along. So we always look at key concepts that can help you through the learning unit. So you need to understand creative arts, which we have touched on in the previous section, a collective term, that encompasses several subject disciplines. Like I said in the previous one, movement, dance, drama, music, visual arts, and appreciation is very important, the recognition and enjoyment of the good qualities of someone or something that they've created. Visual art is basically a form of art that creates, is basically visual in nature, and we can see them, we can look at them, we can really, see what's in their mind, what they're thinking, their ideas. And it's important for them to have imagination, the ability of the mind, it's especially with kids, they're so creative, and they think about images, concepts, and all of those things that are very important for you to incorporate into the classroom. So now we're looking at just introducing Learning Unit 2. So in Learning Unit 1, we explored the meaning of creativity, the importance of providing creative learning experiences for young children. We showed how creativity should become, a fundamental informing aspect of any learning experience. We stressed that although creativity is very much part of the cognitive development, it is closely aligned to all the developmental domains and can be expressed in many ways. Encouraging creativity in young children is fundamental to all aspects of their learning. We also noted that creative arts include visual arts, music, dance, drama, and which are all key areas for fostering creativity in young children. The focus of this unit is we specifically exploring the visual arts. So we unpacking the meaning of visual arts and examining some different concepts or theoretical underpinnings that impact and inform learning through the visual arts. So in this way, we learning how to explore, the setup procedure of a learning environment that supports learning through the visual arts, as well as how to plan and implement enjoyable and successful visual art activities for babies, toddlers, and young children. Okay, so now we're looking at the importance of visual arts as an early learning experience. So if you look at visual arts, they encourage children to develop as creative, imaginative individuals who acquire an appreciation of different forms of visual art. So the focus of the learning should be on an enjoyable, experiential, processes rather than on working towards highly polished end products. So when we're looking at participating in the visual arts, we need to provide many learning experiences for children. Apart from encouraging aesthetic development, the visual arts play an important role in promoting holistic development. And this is where many developmental domains, such as, the gross and fine motor skills through material manipulation, sensory motor development, and also mastery of art techniques. So if you look at it, in addition to exploring and making their own creations, children engage in enjoyable learning experiences, and these result in a sense of satisfaction, and fulfillment, which in turn promotes a more positive self-identity. So it encourages exploration, self-expression, and satisfaction, leading to, like I said, a positive self-identity. So participating in the visual art activities is usually collaborative, in nature, and consequently, children are required to share, negotiate, and interact with each other. And these are all activities that promote acceptable social skills and behaviors. So it really enhances, logical thinking, problem solving, and awareness of shapes, details, and their surroundings. Children learn intuitively, and creatively while solving problems through aesthetic exploration. So now we're looking at 2.3, which is conceptual underpinnings of the visual arts. So remember, we already mentioned that all children show potential for creativity, which can be expressed in many different contexts, including visual arts. And visual arts are art forms appreciated by sight. That's, important to understand that the visual arts can loosely be described as art forms that create works that are primarily visual in nature. So such as ceramics, we're looking at pottery, we're looking at drawing, painting, sculptures, printmaking, design, crafts, photography, video, filmmaking, architecture. In other words, they are creative works of art that are to be appreciated by sight. So visual arts comprise of both, 2D, two-dimensional flat surfaces, drawings, paintings, collages only with width and height. And then you get your 3D, three-dimensional objects with depth, clay modeling, box construction, sculptures, all of that with width, height, and depth. Your visual literacy is basically the ability to interpret and make meaning from images. And they're essential for developing reading, writing, and symbolic understanding. So it's very important for you to look at the study guide, understand the difference between the two-dimensional and three-dimensional shapes. And activity 2.1 is also asking you to study the diagram in figure 2.1, which is also on the screen at the moment. And then you answer the following, the questions that follow, just so you understand box construction, in terms of 3D activities, paintings hung on the wall, finger painting with glitter, all of those things that can create texture, height, depth, and also understand that's 3D, and then 2D is basically flat surface with no depth. And yeah, so when you think about conceptual underpinnings of the visual arts, you need to really consider doing the activity, and also basically reflecting on what you've done. Visual literacy is the ability to interpret, negotiate, and make meaning from a visual text or image. In early learning, this means that the child will, for example, be able to look at a picture and interpret and make meaning of what is seen. So as children acquire language, they will also be able to explain what the pictures they made represents. And as the child's visual literacy improves, they will be able to interpret other symbolic forms, such as a set of written letters, meaning. They will be able to read and write with this process as well. Okay, so we're looking at elements of visual art. So visual art is made up of key elements that help children and teachers understand and appreciate art. So these elements can be introduced informally during, children's creative activities. I'm not even sure if the entire picture is showing correctly, but the key elements of visual art are basically, a line, a mark which made with tools like pencils or brushes. And You can make lines vary, in worth, direction, length, and style. So, it can be zigzag, curved, broken, all of that. I think you can see the line as an element of art on the screen as well. When we look at shape, enclosed spaces formed by lines, it can be geometric, square, circle, or free form, irregular. You can see irregular patterns at the bottom as well. Form 3D versions of shape, like we said, clay models and sculptures, and then you get color, things that enhance expression and variety. And we also need to teach our learners primary colors, red, blue, yellow, and secondary colors, green, orange, purple, things like that. And then look at the texture, bring in activities that, where they can feel how a surface, basically how a surface feels or looks, whether it's smooth, rough, glossy, experience by touch or sight. And then we look at space, how the artist uses the area, example, paper, and children learn to plan and place shapes or symbols thoughtfully in this way. So this is elements of visual art that you can find, more details. This is just a summary, so please don't take it as, you understand all of these elements until you read the study guide thoroughly. And what this 2.3.1 brings on an activity, which is 2.2, and you basically seeing how creative you are. Use at least 4 different types of lines. You can see in table 2.1, the lines there as well. And use at least 4 different types of lines to draw a picture. I will be forming a space on the MyUnisa site that will assist you to maybe post and reflect and maybe read your fellow students' responses as well. And then we're looking at activity 2.3, where you have to design your own art activity. This is where you can create an art activity using at least 2 visual art elements. And I would encourage you to take a photo, post it on the MyUnisa site on the forum that I create. You can also write a short paragraph explaining how the elements were introduced, and ask 3 questions, what type of lines or shapes did you use? How did you choose your colors? What does the texture or artwork feel like? Things like that. Okay, so we're looking at 2.3.2. This is developmental stages of visual art. And we considering why it matters. There have been many studies exploring the what and the why of children's artistic expression. And Victor Lowenfeld, in 1947, was one of the first people to expound on the children's capabilities. And he believed there was a close link between children's general development and their creative development. So Lowenfeld also explored how children draw. He also described the joy children experience when leaving marks on papers. He also realized that children's engagement with the visual arts gave them motor and aesthetic pleasure. And his stages of development in visual art are also important to, understand as well. As an ECCE teacher, knowing that these stages helps you better understand and support and encourage each child's creative growth. So read about that. Ruth Kellogg was also interested in expanding interpretations of children's artworks, as well as, so all of this is something that you will find in your study guide, so please do read up on it. Now we're looking at Lowenfeld and Bretain's stages. This is the scribble stage, which is age 2 to 4, where you will find disordered scribbles. This is ages 1.5 to 2.5, where they have uncontrolled markings that could be bold or light, depending on the personality of the child. And at this age, the child has little or no control over motor activity. The child holds a drawing tool with the whole hand also. And then when we look at longitudinal scribbles, this is children aged 2 to 2.5. These are more controlled repetitions of motions, and children demonstrate visually an awareness and enjoyment of kinesthetic movements. And then we're looking at circular scribbles. This is young children ages 2.5 to 3. So there is further exploring of controlled motions, demonstrating the ability to do more complex forms And in this sub-stage, children often do the following. They use colors unrealistically and tend to use their favorite colors. For example, they will have a purple dog, or, draw a simple people with few features. So that's also you will notice, where they call what is it's basically like a tadpole figure. People are drawn with large heads and a tiny body with extended arms, and objects float in space. They're not anchored, and the figure is normally 3 heads high usually. And then when we're looking at naming scribbles, this is ages 3. It's also 3.5, 4 years. So the child tells stories about the scribble, in terms of there is a change from a kinesthetic thinking in terms of motion to imaginative thinking in terms of pictures. And this is the start of children beginning to visualize in pictures. They name their scribbles, they relate them to the environment, they show better motor control and hold the drawing tool with their fingers as well. And now we're looking at the pre-schematic stage, which is ages 4 to 6. And the first symbolic, first symbolic representations, the pre-schematic stage is recognized by the appearance of circular images with lines which seem to suggest a human or animal figure, and they are the child's first representational attempts. The drawings show that what the child perceives as most important about the subject. There is also little understanding, of space. Objects are basically placed in a haphazard way throughout the picture. The use of color is more emotional than really logical, and it's recognizable geometrical shapes. We can see that is appearing. So these are the 2 stages that are relevant for ECCE teachers. Lowenfeld identified other stages which will be mentioned for the sake of completeness. Schematic stage, which is 6 to 9 years, dawning realism 9 to 11 years, and the physio-realistic stage 11 to 13 years. And if you want to read more about those stages, you can find the link in the study guide that will bring you there as well. Now we're looking at Ruth Kellogg stages. Kellogg identified 20 basic scribbles that children combine in various ways until around the age of 3, when they make their first simple drawings. And according to Kellogg, these initial simple drawings point to the child's beginning to basically intentionally plan the artwork. So if we look at stage 1, the scribbles, this is where ages 2 to 3, all children, regardless of their culture, make the same markings in the same way at approximately the same age. So the earliest drawings, enjoying the process of making scribbles on paper. So this is also ages 2 to 4, scribbles can take shape and look like circles, ovals, squares, triangles, crosses. You will notice this as well. When we look at stage 2, the lines and shapes, this is ages 3 to 5. Children begin to make designs from the shapes they have been drawing, where they draw simple shapes at the beginning of writing as well. And then stage 3 is the semi-representational, ages 4 to 5. Designs take on the form of people or things. And then when we look at 5 to 6, I think I wrote, it's 4 to 5, and then 5 to 6. And this is where children are the pictorial stage. So remember, the semi-representational is 4 to 5, and the pictorial stage is 5 to 6. There's just a typo there. So it's important to realize that children go through various stages in their development of art. As ECCE teachers, we need to recognize the importance of each stage and substage. And at each and every stage, we need to positively acknowledge our children's efforts. We should also ask children what it is that they have drawn. Like I said in the previous presentation, we can then write the explanation on the pictures so that the meaning is clear to all of us, where if you're presenting it, at least others can understand what they were trying to draw as well. There is also links in the study guide that can give you a bit more further reading. And just before we go to 2.3.3, I would just like to give you some teaching tips. Respect each child's individual space. reminder to acknowledge every stage positively, avoid judgment. And like we said, ask children what they've drawn, write down the explanations on the artwork, and encourage storytelling and interpretation to build that visual literacy. So always allow them to give you a story about what they've drawn. Okay, so 2.3.3 is an alternative way of viewing children's artistic development. And this is where, we're looking at new ways of constructing, basically the key ideas from this section is while Lowenfeld and Kellogg focus on developmental stage, newer perspectives revisit the purpose and impact of art in learning. So we're looking at, according to Delata 2020, the visual arts spoke about supporting children in navigating a complex world, being central to the transformative meaning making and personal expression, and also looking at the core part of a play-based, process-orientated curriculum. You can read more about that in the study guide. Visual arts go beyond aesthetics. They foster agency and voice, critical thinking, cultural identity, and inclusivity. And the learning dispositions are creativity, curiosity, flexibility, and motivation. And when we're looking from a social, cultural perspective, children express knowledge through multiple symbolic languages. And that's why we need to incorporate things like drawing, modeling, storytelling, like I've mentioned. And art becomes this bridge, between the child, the culture, and the curriculum. So you also need to, read a lot about that as well, and look at activity 2.4 that expects you to complete a table, where you're comparing, you basically are comparing Lowenfeld and Britton versus Kellogg, and you're also reflecting on the similarities and differences. So it's something that you need to consider, consider how you could include the ideas from all three understandings in your ECCE practices. And hopefully you can also share that in the forum that will be created for activities. Okay, points to ponder. Remember, did you understand all the theories, the value elements of art in terms of line, shape, color? You also need to understand and note universal stages in children's art development. Consider the alternative view. I know it does not examine stages of artistic development, but it does acknowledge that Lowenfeld and Britton, as well as the Kellogg, identified the many important learning competencies related to immersion in visual arts. Can you name these? Things like that. So this view also reinforces the importance of the arts in building foundational skills for lifelong learning. Okay, so now we're looking at 2.4, which is the implementation of the visual arts in early learning. And we're looking at, the key principles here. Visual arts should be implemented within a play-based curriculum. It's very important. As such, the visual arts should, basically permit the entire learning day. So children should have easy access to a variety of visual art resources and have many opportunities to engage with the visual arts throughout the day. Children need ongoing access to diverse art materials, like I said, and effective implementation requires intentional planning and reflection. I cannot emphasize this enough. So as teachers, you must understand the value of arts in learning, design interactive participatory learning experiences, reflect on, teaching methods and children's engagement. And when you look at the three components, of implementation, you also need to consider that as well, in terms of people, all stakeholders involved in terms of teachers, children, families, community contributors. When we're looking at the place, we're talking about the learning environment. It must support exploration, creativity, and have that ease to access materials for this art activities and programs. Remember, as an ECCE teacher, you need to create a daily schedule, and it should be structured and give also spontaneous opportunities for visual art experiences. So remember, all three components, people, place, and program, must be considered together for success of visual arts integration. When you're looking at 2.4.1, the learning environment, The purpose is to create a safe, engaging, and accessible space where children can explore and enjoy visual arts independently and collaboratively. And remember, the key considerations that you need to read about in your study guide is the physical environment, the physical space, whether it be indoors, outdoors, give ample space, dedicate an art area, use outdoor spaces. It must be, furniture must be child size, in terms of the table, floor, whatever it is. And they must have easy access to hand washing facilities and protective gear as well. When we look at the resource placement, art must be clean, inviting, well maintained, should not be next to quiet areas like book corners. They need to, be able to interact, and the resources must be accessible to children to create that independence and able to get them to get it themselves, that self-help art during free play. Art resources, consider keeping recycled materials, all of those sort of things. Keep things separate, make it easy and labeled, that it's child accessible and things like that. Examples of art materials, you always need to have crayons, paint, paper, scissors, glue, magazines, Play-Doh tools, glitter, all of those things that support diverse activities in terms of drawings, collages, painting, sculpting, whatever needs to be done. When we look at 2.4.2, the people, firstly, we're looking at the child. The visual art activities must align with the developmental stages and capabilities across the 3 age groups. Remember, when babies are 0 to 18 months, they're not active in drawing, painting, but can be exposed to color, shape, visual stimulation. When we use mobiles, those picture displays, messy play, all of those things, tummy time is so important, and allow them to do some finger painting. When we look at toddlers between 18 months and 3 years, they basically hold chubby crayons and enjoy pull and push toys and explore textures, shapes, provide drawing boards and large crayons, all of that. And this is where they can have opportunities to mix colors and explore that art elements. When we look at young children, 3 to 4 years plus, more detail and skill in their artwork can be seen. So now we can use finer tools like Koki pens, pastels, charcoal, and we can also expand the media, in clay, weaving, threading, cutting, printing, and natural materials for creative use. The opportunities for color mixing, sculpture, detail box, construction, all of that. And then this ECCE teacher, you need to be intentional, flexible, encourage, don't judge, like we mentioned, ask open-ended questions, give, praise for what they've done, and co-construct knowledge with children and respond to their interests. Try to avoid worksheets, promote creativity and critical thinking, and ensure culturally responsive teaching, by displaying diverse artworks, introducing South African global artists, guiding against, different stereotypes as well. And you'll also find activities, that is 2.5, where they want you to reflect on your practice as a promoter of visual arts. So think back to, 2 visual art activities that you initiated for toddlers and young children, get them to name the activity, all of those things. So you also need to reflect on the implementation, consider parental involvement in visual arts, and don't forget the displaying of children's work as well. When we look at 2.4.3, this is the learning program, the daily integration of visual arts. Visual arts should be a consistent part of the daily ECCE program and include both child-initiated activities as well as teacher-guided activities. The difference between the two is that, child-initiated activities are free, self-directed exploration, and then your teacher-guided activities are intentional, skill-building sessions that all the learners would do together. And also remember scheduling art activities. The ideal time would be mid-morning, after breakfast and resting. And there's a lot of things that you need to consider, indoor, outdoor freedom, self-help options, like we've mentioned, and young children, read more about that as well. how many, the time allocation, and also encourage child basically first plan and prepare all of this. Written lessons need to be also done, plan weekly in advance, because you also sometimes need to tell the parents to send certain things if it's required. Encourage child participation in cleanup. Don't not include them in that part where they need to wipe the tables with you, sort out, things, observation and evaluation. That's very important. Assess a children's participation. Sometimes you can find a lot of things that you need to work on during this observation and evaluation period. We're looking at activity 2.7, where you're going to plan a weekly, basically a weekly planning for visual art activities. And we're asking you to plan 5 daily visual art activities for children Monday to Friday. And this gives you the opportunity to really understand what you need to do. So there's a sample theme weekly plan where you can just have an example of it, and the points to really consider, like, are your activities differentiated and stimulating? Does it promote independence? All of those things. Is it encouraging? And do your activities focus on the creative process or over the final product? Because we have noted that it's the process that's important. Okay, so we've reached the end of this presentation. We're just going to reflect and conclude. So remember, when you're reflecting as an ECC teacher, you need to consider your attitude. What does visual art mean to you personally, and how important is it in your life? And then also have value for arts. How does visual art inspire your own creativity and aesthetics? The holistic development, how do you see visual art? Do you feel it contributes to early learning, whether it be social, emotional, cognitive, and motor development? And then also consider the developmental stages, with the Lowenfeld and Kellogg stages. Use this knowledge to design age-appropriate, culturally responsive activities. And when you're looking at differentiated planning, looking at babies, toddlers, young children, understand how you need to differentiate between the activities and provide stimulating, open-ended art experiences. To conclude, visual arts, I must say, visual arts are a powerful lens for understanding and nurturing creativity in early childhood. And we explored so many things today, and I hope that you are able to understand this learning unit better. And the goal is to create a space where children can create, explore, and express themselves freely through art. Thank you for listening to this presentation. I really hope it gave you a better understanding of Learning Unit 2. Be sure to watch out for the presentation on Learning Unit 3 that will happen next. Thank you.